Paint samples were still taped to the wall when I walked in. 7 of them, fanned out across the living room wall like a decorator's mood board. Warm terracotta, dusty sage, something labeled coastal mist that looked like the color of a decision made by someone who had never paid for anything in their life. My sister-in-law Monica had left a notebook open on the kitchen counter. Fabric swatches tucked inside. A circled quote from an interior designer whose day rate was $4,000. My brother Ryan was in the kitchen making coffee in my coffee maker, using my coffee, standing on my imported Italian tile in the socks he had worn on the flight over. He looked up when I walked in. "Claire," he said. Not surprised. Not guilty. The tone of a man who has already decided the terms of a situation and is simply waiting for everyone else to catch up. "We need to talk about the penthouse," he said. "Yes," I said, "we do." What he didn't know, what none of them knew, was that I had been waiting for exactly this moment for 11 weeks. And I had spent every one of those weeks making sure that when it arrived, I would not need to raise my voice once. Before I tell you what I said next, and why I waited 11 weeks to say it, drop a comment and tell me where you're watching from. Because what happens in this story is something I think a lot of you are going to recognize. My name is Claire. I'm 33 years old. To my family, I am the younger sister. The quiet one. The one who moved to the city at 22 with 2 suitcases and a scholarship and did not come home for holidays with stories that impressed anyone at the table. To the 7 companies that sit inside my holding group, I am the founder, the majority owner, and the reason 4 of those businesses turned profitable inside of 18 months. I do not talk about money. Not because I am ashamed of it, but because I learned early that the people who announce what they have are usually the people with the least of it. And the people who stay quiet are usually the ones who have already won. My brother Ryan had never learned that lesson. Ryan talked about money constantly, the money he was about to make, the deal that was almost closed, the investment that was going to change everything. He had been almost changing everything for about a decade. He almost never quite arrived. What did arrive 6 months ago was our grandmother's death. And with it, her penthouse. Our grandmother, Edith, had bought the penthouse in 1987. 14 floors up, corner unit, floor-to-ceiling windows that looked out over the whole city the way a person looks at something they have earned the right to watch. She had bought it with money she made herself, from a textile business she had built after our grandfather left, after everyone told her she was too old to start over, after the particular silence that follows a woman being abandoned by the people who were supposed to stay. She had lived in that penthouse for 37 years. She had raised orchids on the terrace. She had hosted Sunday dinners for 30 people in the open-plan living space. She had sat in the corner chair by the east window every morning with her coffee and her newspaper, and the particular stillness of a woman who had survived enough to know that stillness was a form of strength. I had visited her every month without exception for 11 years. I had sat in that corner chair beside her and listened to her talk about the business she built and the decisions she had made and the things she wished she had done differently and the things she would not change for anything. Ryan had visited 4 times in 11 years. I know this because Edith told me. She didn't say it with bitterness. She said it the way she said most true things, plainly, as information, as a data point in the larger ledger of a person's character. When Edith died, she left the penthouse to me. Not to Ryan. Not to be split. To me specifically, with a handwritten note attached to the will that said, "You showed up." That is the whole of it. Ryan found out on a Tuesday. By Thursday, he had called me 4 times. Each call a variation on the same theme, that Grandma had always meant for the penthouse to stay in the family, that she would have wanted us to share it, that it seemed unfair given everything, that surely we could come to some kind of arrangement. I told him I would think about it. I was not thinking about it. I was watching. 3 weeks after the will was read, Ryan called to tell me that he and Monica and their 2 kids were going through a difficult transition. He used the word transition the way people use it when they mean something more specific, but more embarrassing. What he meant was that the lease on their apartment had ended, and the new place he had planned to move into had fallen through, and they needed somewhere to stay for a few weeks while they sorted things out. He asked if they could use the penthouse temporarily. Just a few weeks. Just until the situation resolved. I said yes. My attorney, a woman named Sylvia who has structured every significant decision I have made for the past 7 years, told me I was being too generous. I told her I was being strategic. She told me those were sometimes the same thing, and sometimes dangerously different. I told her to trust me, and to prepare the documents I had outlined in the memo I had sent her the previous week. She read the memo. She said, "Oh." She said, "How long have you been planning this?" I said, "Since Tuesday." The few weeks became 6 weeks. Then 8. Then Ryan stopped mentioning a timeline at all. Monica had enrolled the kids in a school 4 blocks away. She had joined a yoga studio on the corner. She had started referring to the Penthouse in conversations with her friends. I know this because one of those friends mentioned it to someone I know as our place. In week 9, the paint samples appeared. In week 10, a furniture catalog arrived addressed to Monica Caldwell at my address. In week 11, Ryan called a family meeting. He sent a group text to me, our parents, and 2 of our aunts. He said there was something important to discuss regarding Grandma Edith's estate and that he thought it would be good to get everyone together. He had scheduled it for Sunday dinner. At the Penthouse, my penthouse, I confirmed I would be there. Then I called Sylvia and told her it was time. Here is what Ryan did not know. 3 days after he moved his family into my penthouse, I had filed the formal documentation establishing the property under my holding company. The penthouse was no longer held in my personal name. It was an asset of Claire Holdings LLC, a parent entity with 7 subsidiaries, a clean balance sheet, and a compliance record that my accountant described once as aggressively tidy. What that meant in practical terms was that any attempt to claim residency rights, challenge the inheritance, or file any kind of adverse possession argument, which Sylvia had flagged as a theoretical risk after 8 weeks of occupation, would not be against me personally. It would be against a corporate entity with a legal team, documented acquisition history, and paperwork going back 11 years. I had also done something else. During the 11 weeks Ryan's family had been living in my penthouse, I had been documenting everything. Not in a dramatic way. Not in the way of someone building a case out of anger. In the way of someone who understands that information is infrastructure. I had the entry log from the building's digital key system. I had time-stamped photographs of the paint samples, the furniture catalog, the children's artwork now taped to my grandmother's kitchen wall. I had a record of the school enrollment, the yoga studio membership, the interior designer quote that Monica had requested and which had been emailed to my address by mistake because she had given them the penthouse as her contact address. And I had something else. A lease agreement. Signed by Ryan, dated the day he moved in for a rent of $1 per month, explicitly categorized as a temporary occupancy arrangement with a 30-day termination clause and a clause, buried in paragraph 7. The way important things often are specifying that any modifications to the property required written approval from the owner and that unauthorized modifications would be treated as breach of agreement and grounds for immediate termination. Ryan had signed it the day he moved in. He had signed it in the lobby, while Monica was directing the movers, while the kids were running to the elevator. He had signed it because I had handed it to him and said it was just a formality, a thing my accountant needed for tax purposes, nothing complicated. He had not read paragraph 7. He had redecorated without written approval. The paint samples on the wall were a breach of contract. Sunday arrived clear and cold. I got to the penthouse 20 minutes before everyone else. I wanted to see it, the paint samples still on the wall, the furniture catalog on the counter, the children's artwork in the kitchen, the orchids on the terrace that Monica had moved to make room for a bistro set she had ordered. Grandma Edith's orchids. In the corner where they had always been. Now pushed aside for bistro set. I stood on the terrace for a moment and looked out at the city the way Edith used to look at it. The whole of it spread out below like a balance sheet. I went back inside. Sylvia arrived at the same time as my parents. She was carrying a leather folio and wearing the expression she always wore in these situations, professionally pleasant, internally several moves ahead. My parents thought she was my financial advisor. I had not corrected them. Ryan began the meeting the way he always began things he had rehearsed, with warmth. He thanked everyone for coming. He said family was the most important thing. He said Grandma Edith would have wanted them to handle this together, with love, with fairness. Monica nodded at everything he said, with the performance of a woman who had practiced sincerity in a mirror. Ryan said that he had been doing a lot of thinking about the penthouse. He said that he understood the will had left it to me. He said that he wasn't disputing that. He was simply raising the question of whether it was right. Whether one person should hold something that had been part of the whole family for 37 years. Whether Claire, and here he used my name with a specific gentleness, the gentleness of someone handling something fragile, whether Claire had really considered what Grandma Edith would have truly wanted. He slid a document across the coffee table. A proposal. Drafted, I noted, by a lawyer whose letterhead I recognized as a mid-tier firm downtown. The proposal suggested a shared ownership structure. Equal split. Ryan and Claire as co-owners of the penthouse, with a management agreement giving Ryan primary residency rights in exchange for handling maintenance and upkeep. He had prepared this. He had paid for it. He had sat in the penthouse, my grandmother left to me, and planned how to take half of it. My mother said it sounded reasonable. My father said he thought Claire should consider it seriously. One of my aunts said family was family. I let them finish. Then I looked at Ryan. Can I ask you something? I said. He said, of course, with the openness of a man who believes he has already won. Did you read the document you signed when you moved in? The openness flickered. The tax form. He said. The occupancy agreement, I said. Sylvia opened her folio. She placed the first document on the coffee table. The lease agreement. 2 pages. Ryan's signature on page 2, dated 11 weeks ago, witnessed by the building's front desk manager. Ryan picked it up. He read the first paragraph. He read the second. He turned to page 2 and found his signature, and I watched the sequence of understanding move across his face the way weather moves across open water, slowly at first, then all at once. This isn't, he started. A tax form, I said. No. It's a 30-day occupancy agreement with a termination clause and a modification prohibition. Sylvia placed the second document. Timestamp photographs. 7 paint samples on the living room wall. The furniture catalog. The interior designer quote. Paragraph 7, Sylvia said pleasantly, specifies that any modifications to the property require written approval from the owner. Unauthorized modifications constitute breach of agreement. Monica said, we were just looking at colors. The samples are adhered to the wall, Sylvia said. That constitutes modification. My mother said, Claire, this seems. I haven't finished, I said. Not unkindly. Just clearly. Sylvia placed the third document. The Claire Holdings LLC filing. The Penthouse formally and legally as a corporate asset. Any legal challenge to the inheritance or occupancy would be directed to the entity, its registered legal team, and its 11-year documentation history. Then she placed the fourth document. A formal 30-day notice of termination of occupancy. Dated today. Signed by me. Properly witnessed. Ryan set down the lease agreement. The room was very quiet. You planned this, he said. His voice had lost its warmth entirely. I prepared, I said. There's a difference. You let us move in knowing. I let you move in, I said, because I wanted to give you somewhere to stay while you sorted your situation. The agreement was 30 days. 11 weeks is not 30 days. School enrollment and the yoga membership and the interior designer are not a temporary transition. They are a permanent move into a property that belongs to me. Grandma would have wanted. Grandma visited me every month for 11 years, I said. She left me a note with the will. It said you showed up. That is the whole of it. I reached into my bag and placed the note on the coffee table. Edith's handwriting. Small and precise and completely legible. Ryan looked at it for a long time. Monica looked at the paint samples on the wall. My parents did not say much after that. My father looked at the note in Edith's handwriting, and something moved across his face that I recognized as the specific discomfort of a person who has been supporting the wrong side of an argument and has just realized it in a room full of witnesses. My mother asked if there was any flexibility on the 30 days. I said the agreement was 30 days and I would honor the full term. I said I had no interest in putting children out of a home without proper time to make arrangements. I said I had already identified 2 rental properties in the same school district that were within Ryan's stated budget, and that Sylvia had prepared a summary of both with contact information for the property managers. Sylvia placed the summary on the table. Ryan looked at it. He looked at me. You've had this ready, he said. Since week 3, I said. He laughed then. Not a warm laugh. Not a cruel one either. The kind of laugh that comes out when something is too precisely true to argue with. He picked up the rental summary. He folded it once and put it in his jacket pocket. His family left before the coffee was finished. I stayed. I stood on the terrace where Edith's orchids had been pushed to the corner, and I moved them back. One by one, back to the railing where they had always been. Where she had always kept them. Where the morning light hit them at the angle she had told me once, laughing, was the only angle that mattered. I stood there for a while with the city below me and the orchids beside me, and the quiet that comes after something long and necessary is finally finished. I thought about Edith. About the woman who had built something from nothing after everyone told her it was too late. About the corner chair and the morning coffee and the 37 years of looking out at a city she had earned the right to watch. I thought about the note she had left me. 6 words. The whole of it. You showed up. That is the whole of it. I had been showing up for 11 years. 11 weeks of waiting was nothing. Ryan moved out on day 28. He left the paint samples on the wall. I painted over them myself on a Saturday morning with the color Edith had chosen when she first moved in. A warm, quiet white. The color of a room that knows exactly who it belongs to.